Back in the rain, president of the state, so which is not an 85 change shot, but it's now based on the started well, here it is now. It all bubbled up. So that was very expensive education. I found I did some lake breakfast. I sold my business and 3 years ago. I sold it to the guy that bought it. Ran a water everybody else I talked to, they didn't have my water engineer and water things. So it's like, wow, how about your business? Very complex. I know you saw orange. Everybody has about water.
I'll try to get your hand adjustments and stuff like that. I wasn't going to introduce you, I was just going to have you come back. I really don't have a second
All right, y'all. You ready to talk about some water? Yes, that's the right answer. And I know you'll be heckling me later, just buttering me up now. I appreciate that. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our host at Headliners Club, Kendall Bennett, our former board president. I want to thank y'all for being here. This luncheon is the first time we're doing it. Appreciate you trying it out with us. The State of the River Luncheon is just for our Tributary League members. So everybody in this room is either currently a Tributary League member or they are hopefully going to join at the end of this luncheon. Thank you for what you do. You know, our programs, which are about championing the long-term vitality of the Texas-Colorado River, would not be possible without our Tributary League. Our education programs serve 8,000 kids a year. That's where that money goes. And so thank you for your support. Thank you for making the time to be here today to have this conversation. And also thank you for your interest in the State of the River. For those of you who don't know me well, I have been executive director at the Colorado River Alliance for about a year and a half. Ray, can you hear me okay in the back of the room? Okay. I've been executive director for about a year and a half, and my whole background is science and science education and environmental education. And so I was drawn to this job, first of all, for the content, right? I'm the kind of person that when I get up in the morning and go to work, it has to be something that I believe in. And this mission and this work really speaks to me, and it moves me, and I get up every day with passion, which is a wonderful thing to be able to say about your work. But I was also drawn to this job because of how the work is done. Now, the Colorado River Alliance is not the organization that's picking fights. Now, there's people out there fighting the fights, and God bless them, because somebody's got to be fighting those fights. Our role in water and in river stewardship is about bringing people together, and it's about having conversations. And if you took a poll in this room, you would find out that we have people in this room from every corner of this political spectrum, from every perspective within the water world. I mean, look around. That is the strength of the Colorado River Alliance. And I'm honored to be the executive director, and it's great to be here with you today. I'm going to talk about the river, and I'm going to talk about water issues. And I'm also going to save some time at the end to let you know about what's going on with our programs and what's new. Before I jump in, I want to take a moment to recognize that I am far from the smartest person in the room. We have 3 former general managers of LCRA over at this table, Mark Rose, Joe Beal, and Tom Mason. Current general manager of LCRA, Phil Wilson, in the back of the room there. We've got former Austin Mayor, Will Wynn. We've got former Bastrop Mayor, Ken Kesselis. Y'all have spent your lives in water, figuratively and literally, for some of you. Over the last year and a half, I've talked to hundreds of people up and down the basin, and it's a big basin, right? My joke is that I'm in charge of 15% of Texas. I've talked to a lot of people about the river and about water. And my hope, speaking before you today is kind of humbling. My hope is that my comments will be meaningful and valuable, and maybe you'll learn something along the way. We have people in the room from elsewhere in the basin. We've got Eva from down in Bay City. Steve's here from El Campo. Mike's here from San Saba. The basin is represented. And of course, a lot of you are from Austin as well. All right, so my comments, I'm just going to move at breakneck pace, okay? This is going to be a mile wide and an inch deep. I'm going to touch on a lot of topics. By the time I get done, you're going to look a little bit like this guy with your hair blown back because I've been talking so fast. I wish that we had time for discussions and comments and all of that stuff and questions. Realistically, that's what our other programs are for, right? That's what the Barstow Speaker Series is for, the Colorado River VIP Tour. These are programs of ours where we have those more in-depth discussions. Any one of these topics could take 2 or 3 hours. We could do it and have a really good conversation about it. Today, I'm going to breeze through some stuff, and when you want to have those longer conversations, call me. We'll go out to lunch and we'll have it. All right. Should we dive in? What's the state of the river like? How's it doing? Given that this is the fastest growing large metropolitan area in the country, and we've got a river running right through the middle of town, the state of the river is pretty good. This photo was taken about 4 weeks ago. These are river otters in Austin. This was taken on the eastern edge of town, right by the airport, basically. And I'm told that this is the first photographic evidence of otters in Austin in years. Otters are an indicator of river health. The fact that we have otters returning to Austin says something about the quality of our water. And it is not just, we need to recognize and celebrate ourselves for the fact that we have made that the case, right? The reason our water quality is good is because of the work of LCRA and the city of Austin and all of us making sure that we have policies in place and procedures and all of this stuff that keep the river healthy. travel around the country, not everybody can say that the river is healthy. Not everybody can say that they got ours. Now, it's not just what's been done in the past, it's also the ongoing monitoring that happens, right? And if you're a water nerd like me, you're probably already familiar with this website. It's waterquality.lcra.org. Each one of these raindrops, that's the Colorado River, right? From the Highland Lakes down to about Smithville or so. Each one of those raindrops is a water quality monitoring site. And I love this because you can go to this website and click on one of those raindrops and it pulls up the data. Now, some of these are LCRA monitored, some of them are City of Austin, some of them are the state through TCEQ. Some of these sites have data going back 30 years, so it's super cool. The monitoring is happening. And when problems arise, we know about them and we figure out how to fix them. So what are the threats to water quality, right? We are in the fastest growing metropolitan area in the country. And more people is more potential for pollution, right? It's more potential for water quality problems. If you've been following the news, you've probably heard a little bit about this. Over the last year, Dripping Springs has made the news. Dripping Springs, again, a smaller community, but also experiencing explosive population growth. When they looked ahead to their projections over the coming decades, they said, we're going to need a way to dispose of wastewater. And so they applied for a permit to discharge treated wastewater into Onion Creek. 1 million gallons a day, almost 1 million gallons a day on that permit. Now, it's treated wastewater, right? So it's not like it's raw sewage, but it's not 100% clean either. And lots of folks were worried about this. Landowners on Onion Creek, what's this going to do to my creek? What's this going to do to my property value? Onion Creek recharges the Trinity Aquifer. It recharges parts of the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer. That permit has been opposed by some of the landowners, has been opposed by the City of Austin, who's worried about water quality in Barton Springs. It's been opposed by the conservation districts, and that's why it's making the news. It's controversy. And my point in bringing this up is that as we move forward, you're going to be seeing controversies like this coming up. And our role as Colorado River Alliance, if you're one of those people that is so excited to get our newsletter every month and you read it, start to finish, you've already heard about this, because our role is to let people know that this is happening. We're not going to necessarily take a side on stuff, but we need our audience and we need the Austin population in general to be keeping track of what's going on and be aware of the current issues. And this is one of them. In Austin, you see it around the Code Next discussions. Right? Code Next is the new draft of land development code in Austin. How is it dealing with water? How is it dealing with wastewater? We're seeing that here too, and we'll be seeing it all across the basin. Water quality is affected by explosive population growth, and water quantity is affected by population growth, obviously, right? Are we gonna have enough water? I heard Robert Mapes from Texas Water Development Board recently say that if the drought in the 50s hit today, 300 municipalities across the state would run out of water. If the drought in the 50s hit today, 300 municipalities would run out of water. The drought in the 50s, the drought that we went through a few years ago, were not the biggest droughts that this region has seen. 16th century, 15th century, 14th century, mega droughts that lasted for decades. What are we going to do about that? As the Colorado River Alliance, how do we make sure that we're doing what we can to ensure the long-term health of this river, given the possibility of this, right? And we've all heard the news reports about the possibility of bigger floods and bigger droughts as climate uncertainty comes to fruition. Now, happily, there's lots of really smart people working on this. The City of Austin has created a task force called Water Forward. Water Forward, the charge for Water Forward is to figure out our 100-year future for water in the City of Austin. Think about that. 100 years out, what's water going to look like? There's very smart people on this. One of our board members is on this, Jennifer Walker. My predecessor at the Colorado River Alliance, Sarah Richards, is on this task force. They're looking at everything, right? Surface water, groundwater, water conservation, which is the cheapest source of water, right? Aquifer storage and recovery, interbasin transfers, brackish desal. Everything's on the table for water forward planning. They're looking at projections on demand, they're looking at projections on supply. Over the next year or so, the work is going to happen, the wheels are turning, and then next spring, Water Forward should start having some recommendations to talk about publicly. I've been working recently with the folks from Water Forward and Leadership Austin to create some opportunities for public conversations next spring so that we can talk about this and that we can get more visibility. Because, I mean, you guys know water, right? I'm preaching to the choir here, but there's a whole world out there of people that just aren't paying attention to it. And the more we can bring up these conversations in the public, the better. So, we're working on this. Charlene Lurid, by the way, is at Texas State's Meadows Center for Water and the Environment. She's in charge, she's the chair of this task force. She also came to our board meeting, our most recent board meeting, and did a presentation about Water Forward. It's very cool, very smart person. 100-year time horizon is great. We also need to be thinking about more immediate needs. And so this is a photo of the construction at LCRA's new Lane City Reservoir. And this is an off-channel reservoir in Wharton County, I think? Is it Wharton County? Yeah. The idea here is that, well, backing up, a lot of the tensions we saw in Austin were between Highland Lakes property owners, the city of Austin, and agricultural interests downstream, right? Rice farmers, especially. Who's getting the water? And what happens in the case of a drought? The purpose of this reservoir is to help alleviate some of that pressure. When, as an example, it rains hard, a lot of water is flowing down the river. When this is finished, LCRA can take some of that water and store it in the Lane City Reservoir. Then it sits there. As the water levels go low, then they can release that for folks a little bit further downstream so that rice farmers, for instance, can have water and it doesn't have to be released from the Highland Lakes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is supposed to go online. What they're saying right now is late 2018, and maybe Phil can share an update on that. LCRA's estimate is that it will provide about 90,000 acre feet per year of water supply, which is awesome. That's great. It's not just for irrigation. One of the important things about water in the river is what are called environmental flows. Now, environmental flows, and I know a bunch of you know what environmental flows are. The question is how much water needs to be in the river for the river to stay healthy, for the fish and the mussels and everything else that's in it. Not just the river itself, but then also the bay. Now the bay, for us, the Colorado River empties into Matagorda Bay. All of those bays, the shrimp, the oysters, the fish, the sport fishing, right, the recreational fishing, the bird watching, all of that stuff, that's billions of dollars in industry. And if there's not water flowing down the rivers, those bays are not getting the water that they need to keep a healthy ecosystem in the bay. So, environmental flows are important. And we have, over the last 15 years or so, more and more attention has started to be paid to environmental flows. So, this is a new project. The challenge with environmental flows is that when you leave water in the river, it costs money, right? Because the water could be used somewhere else for farming or industry or something. So leaving it in the river costs money, even if it's keeping the river healthy. But what if it didn't? And what if you could create a market so that senior water rights holders could actually be financially benefited by allowing their right to be used for environmental flows. The Environmental Flows Project is a couple of heavy hitters in kind of the water conservation world looking at the market for e-flows. Western states have fairly mature e-flow markets. And the idea of this project is let's test that out in Texas. Some of the money behind that, by the way, is coming from the Restore Act funds, which is BP oil settlement money. So this is exciting. It's really interesting. Like to hear Laura Huffman, one of our advisory council members, she's director of the Nature Conservancy in Texas, to hear her talk about this. It's fascinating work. And we'll be watching that over the next year or so. The eFlows project is being managed, actually by Charlene Lurie. It is being managed out of the Meadows Center. Another Meadows Center project is the Pedernales Basin Watershed Science Project. It's kind of like a gigantic science fair. How am I doing so far? Everybody's eyes are still open. That's good. You feel like your hair is blown back yet? No hair to blow back?
All three of them.
This project attempts to answer the question, how much water is available in the Pedernales Basin, right? Surface water and groundwater. Now, it sounds like an easy question, but answering it is actually really, really hard. What do the water availability models look like? And do they need to be updated? The answer is yes. What about the groundwater availability models? Do those need to be updated? The answer is yes. So there's a whole bunch of research folks connected to this project to try to answer that question. This is groundbreaking research. It's being done in a way that's never been done before. And parts of the research are already done, and parts of it are still getting finished up right now. I've been in talks, the associate director for the Meadows Center, Emily Warren, is also on our board of directors, and I've been talking to her about tentatively our next Barstow Speaker Series event, which, by the way, all of our Tributary League members get free tickets to. Did I mention that? Free tickets to Barstow. Anyway, our next Barstow is going to, I think, is going to be about this. And it's going to be, what's the results of the research, and what are the implications for this? When I talk about implications, I mean, as you know, water underground is legally treated very differently than water on the surface, right? Totally separate sets of laws, but it's the same water. It goes back and forth. My thinking, and again, this is Brent's opinion on this, I think that as research like this comes to light, that legal distinction between groundwater and surface water is going to start to get fuzzy. And I think people are going to start using research like this as for lawsuits. I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of litigation around this in the coming years. So, as I'm here sharing information about you about current issues in the river, I want you to be aware of this as well. Watch for this. I think it's going to happen. I was just in San Saba last week. Here in Austin, a lot of the media attention is about, the Highland Lakes and rice farmers and how much water the city of Austin is using. And that's our immediate, that's the thing we're most, that's what we're faced with every day. But the tension between upstream and downstream interests is not just the Colorado. San Saba Basin has been wrestling with this for years as well. So, the meeting last week that I was at, in San Saba, in that watershed, what's happening is that irrigators upstream, the accusation is that irrigators upstream are hogging all the water, and then ranchers downstream don't have enough water. The meeting last week was about creating a water master for the San Saba Basin. And if you're not familiar with the Water Master Program, it is a state program. It's managed through TCEQ. And the idea is that when you have a water rights holder upstream, a water rights holder downstream, and there's questions, hey, I got a water right, but I don't have any water. I've got a water right, I don't have any water. The idea is that the water master becomes the point person for resolving those disputes. And that over time, the water master can work with the water rights holders to create some equitable solutions long term. So TCQ doesn't have to answer the phone every time someone says, hey, I got a water right and I don't got any water. TCQ then says, well, go talk to your water master. That's the point of this program. It was an interesting meeting. Hearing a lot of different perspectives, and let me tell you, they were, it was hosted by TCQ, and there was not a lot of love for TCQ in the room at that meeting. I felt bad for them. Anyway, my gut tells me that they may do this. They may put the Water Master Program in place for the San Saba. You know, in a lot of ways, that's a good thing. By the way, the other thing that was discussed in that meeting was the possibility of a water master for the entire Colorado River Basin, right? Concho, San Saba, Llano, Pedernales, and the Colorado. There, my gut's telling me they probably won't do it, but it's on the table right now. That would be that would be interesting if the Water Master Program got instituted for the whole Colorado River Basin. So, current events. TCEQ is having these public meetings right now. Actually, there's one tonight in Fredericksburg. They are going to report to the commissioners in July, I believe, and that San Saba Water Master could be put in place as early as August. It takes it about a year to kind of get the program up and running and get it going, but this could happen within the next couple months. Again, if you've been reading our newsletters, you know all about the freshwater mussels. Of the 52 or so species of freshwater mussels that live across the state of Texas, there are 5 that currently live in the Colorado and are being considered for endangered species listing. These are the 5 species. If that goes through, if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service approves these and they are officially listed, what that will mean is that additional regulations and restrictions will be put on how water is managed in our river. And it's not just in the Colorado, the tributaries also have some of these mussels as well. That's a big deal. It's a big deal if these things get listed. In anticipation of that, the state of Texas Comptroller's Office, and because of the economic implications, it's the Comptroller's Office that is in charge of endangered species programming. It used to be Texas Parks and Wildlife, which kind of makes sense from a biology point of view, but economically, it makes sense for the comptroller to be involved in this. And as a science geek, I'm kind of excited because the comptroller's office is throwing millions of dollars into research on these mussels right now. Now, why is the comptroller doing that? The idea is that if we can get enough science and understanding of these mussels now, and we can put voluntary measures in place to conserve these species, then Fish and Wildlife Service might say, well, okay, well, we don't need to list it right now. We're going to check back in a little bit later, but you guys got it under control. That's what that's for, right? But in the meantime, there's some great research happening on freshwater mussels in the Colorado River. You know, what's their tolerance to drought? What's their tolerance to floods? Genetic mapping. If there's a drought, can they be raised in captivity and reintroduced? Like, there's all kinds of research happening right now. And there's meetings all the time about kind of all the stakeholders, bringing them all together, hosted by the comptroller to see what's going on. LCRA is involved with that, by the way. I stole this slide from Lisa Benton, who is the person on staff at LCRA who is doing their part of that mussel research. There's all kinds of people involved in this. It's cool stuff. Now, when I say mussels and I talk about mussels, because I give presentations all the time, right? And I talk about mussels. Usually it's not this stuff that people care about, or not that they don't care. It's not this stuff that people have heard about. It's these guys. It's the zebra mussels. Zebra mussels are non-native, and they are bad news. They have been, the problems that they have caused in the Great Lakes, these things populate like crazy. Like, nod your head if you know about zebra mussels and you know what we're talking about. These things populate so fast that they start clogging up water lines and messing with hydroelectric power and clogging up machines. Like, they are bad. 4 days ago, Texas Parks and Wildlife issued a press release that these have now been confirmed in the Guadalupe Basin. Over the last couple decades, they've been making their way south across the United States, and for a while, people were saying, oh, it's too hot in Texas, they'll never get here, but then sure enough, they showed up in Texas. Not all of the northern river basins, several of the larger northern Texas river basins have these things. The Guadalupe is the furthest south. So we've got them in the Brazos right above us, and we've got them in the Guadalupe right below us. Every mussel biologist I talk to says the Highland Lakes are awesome habitat for these things, unfortunately. So over the next couple of years, I'm here to tell you, you heard me say it, we're going to see these in the Colorado. It's going to happen. And once they get in the Highland Lakes, there's not going to be a whole lot we can do to stop them. I mean, the effort thus far has focused on preventing the spread from one basin to the other by encouraging boaters to clean their boats and get them dry. These things, if the little microscopic kind of larvae of these things get inside a rope on a boat that's wet, they can live there for days. Even if the rest of the boat is totally dry and clean, they can live inside that rope. And as soon as that boat goes into another river, they can get out and start populating. Anyway, zebra mussels, they're coming. They're coming. The biggest threat to rivers in Texas. Come on, wait for me. Oh. I love this quote. This was Jace Houston, and when he said this, of course, this is my segue into politics. You recognize that immediately, right? When Jace said that, it was a water meeting at the Capitol, and I love that quote. And look, I understand that when I start talking about politics, I will get on shaky ground real soon. The reality is that if we are going to talk about the future of rivers, we've got to talk about politics. And we've got to have the courage to jump in and have those conversations. At the Colorado River Alliance, that's why we had a Barstow speaker series with Representative Paul Workman and retiring Representative Jim Keffer to talk about water issues in the 85th session. Politics matters. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about that. And let's start at the federal level. The EPA has experienced some changes lately. Perhaps you've heard about those. In this room, I'm sure we have a variety of opinions about whether that's a good idea, right? And whether or not the changes at the EPA are good or bad or whatever. My purpose today is to share with you that that has impact, right? No matter what you think about those changes, good or bad, we need to know, how that will affect us locally. So let me give you a couple examples. Number one, in the Llano River watershed, there is a group of farmers and ranchers and landowners who have banded together and created a watershed plan for the Llano River with the idea of what can we do as landowners to keep this river healthy. And it's things like brush control and feral hog control and educating other landowners about how to manage their land so that the river stays healthy. That Llano River Watershed Alliance has one staff person. His name is Tyson Broad. He's based out